10% range for that. The amounts I'm going to provide for you this year are based on the 2022 actual funding allocation, which we just received around a month ago. The estimate, we're estimating to be over 26 million. We plan to allocate to public facilities, which the funds in this program are used for water and sewer projects, roughly 8.8 million. Community projects, these funds are typically used to support projects that small communities find difficult to do on their own. For example, volunteer fire departments, libraries, health centers, food banks, and senior centers. The new project is going to receive 5.8 million of our cut. Economic development, 5 million, used to provide projects that create jobs. This usually is through equipment financing, land acquisition, for infrastructure to an economic development site. Public services, 2.8 million, in which we do collaborate with Department of Corrections and Kentucky Housing Corporation. And it's because of the tremendous drug problems the state and the country faces. Recovery centers are where we focus our public services funding. We're only allowed to use up to 15% of our annual allocation for public services. So currently use it and restrict it to that. Housing, about 3.2 million. These are used to rehab low-income properties, conversion of buildings such as old schools for seniors and low-income apartments. The Community Emergency Relief Fund, we don't put an amount in there every year as we haven't used it in a few years, and if emergency comes up, we can. Some of the changes to our guidelines that are on the DLG website, kydlg.ky.web, I believe. We've increased in public facilities line, tank, and pump work from 1 million to 1.25 million. And the joint applications for that can go up to 3 million. Self-help public facilities projects from 250,000 to 300,000. And combined total water and sewer rate increases from $60 to $64. And if there's no questions, that's it for CDBG at the moment. Thank you.
Next up is Curtis Stauffer. Sorry, Curtis, we cannot. You're muted.
Just trying to continue the multi-year effort of having mute on during a meeting. This should be in person. Again, my apologies for not being there in person, everybody. Thinking this was yet again a virtual meeting. But I'll be discussing KHC's planned uses for emergency solutions grants, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, and a portion of our home investment partnerships funding before I turn it over to David Stark and our multifamily team. The Emergency Solutions Grant Program is what I'll discuss first. That program, also known colloquially as ESG, was created when the Homeless Emergency Assistance and Rapid Transition to Housing Act of 2009, or the HARTH Act, amended the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. And it revised the Emergency Shelter Grants Program in significant ways and renamed it the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The ESG interim rule, which is still in effect, the period of enforceability began on January 4th, 2012. It anticipates issuing a final rule sometime in the near future, perhaps in calendar year 2023 for ESG. The ESG program provides funding to engage homeless services, homeless individuals and families living on the street, improve the number and quality of emergency shelters for homeless individuals and families, provide funding to help operate these shelters, provide essential services to those shelter residents, rapidly rehouse homeless individuals and families, and prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. ESG funds may be used for 5 program components: street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing assistance, and homeless management information system, or HMIS, administrative costs. The grant also supports the grantees and its subrecipients' administrative costs up to 7.5% of the grant. In the current federal fiscal year 2022, KHC was awarded $2,646,300 in ESG funds, which we allocated to 36 programs for 34 subrecipient agencies throughout the balance of state. And again, these funds serve the 118 county balance of state, so everywhere but Louisville and Lexington. These funds were awarded by a competitive application, and these funds also support KHC's administrative costs for the program. The Kentucky balance of state was awarded $2,656,768 in federal fiscal year 2023 ESG funding, and that will be governed by this action plan for which we're holding this public hearing today. KHC will hold another competitive application to allocate these funds in spring 2023, and will be allocating those funds on a 2-year renewal basis. Please note that HUD awarded CARES Act ESG funding, known as ESG-CV, totaling $23,404,450 to KHC in federal fiscal year 2019. Activities supported by those funds were included in the 2015 to 2019 Consolidated Plan and the Action Plan governing federal fiscal year 2019. In summer and fall 2020, KHC awarded ESG-CV funding to subrecipients to support rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, street outreach, HMIS administrative costs, and overall program administrative costs. And we did a subsequent award for similar activities in April 2021. ESG-CV funds also support KHC's administrative costs for that program. As a result of this ESG-CV award, for the first time, ESG rapid rehousing was made available throughout the 118 county balance of state. The 2023 action plan does not cover these time-limited funds, and unfortunately they'll be exhausted sometime in calendar year 2023. And with that, I'll move on to our next funding stream, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, or HOPWA. For the current federal fiscal year 2022, KHC was awarded $1,224,026 in HOPWA funds by a formula allocation. The federal fiscal year 2002 allocation of HOPWA formula funding was awarded by will be awarded by an application to be held in spring 2023. KHC will award federal fiscal year 2023 HOPWA formula funding totaling $1,392,747 by a spring 2024 application. These funding cycles are delayed to reduce the administrative burden on KHC and our subrecipient agencies as they continue to finish up their use of HOPWA CARES Act funding, as well as the new submission of a HOPWA competitive grant application that was submitted in fall 2022 and awarded in winter 2022. HOPWA can provide households with case management supported services, tenant-based rental assistance, short-term mortgage, rent, and utility payments, also known as STRMU. Funds can also support KHC's administrative costs for the program, as well as the subrecipient administrative costs. Please note that HUD awarded CARES Act HOPWA funding, known as HOPWA-CV, totaling $129,762 to KHC in federal fiscal year 2019. Activities supported by those funds were included in the 2015 to 2019 Consolidated Plan and the Action Plan governing federal fiscal year 2019. These funds were allocated by amending the grant agreements of our current HOPWA formula grant recipients, AVOL, Heartland Cares, and Matthew 25 AIDS Services. And Heartland Cares is now known as LiveWell. The 2022 action plan does not govern these. The 2023 action plan does not govern these funds. And please also note that HUD awards HOPWA funds outside of the formula allocation process that is governed by our annual allocation plan. These competitive funds are awarded on a 3-year cycle, which I referenced earlier, and the most recent renewal of these grants occurred in late 2022. And these competitive grantees, which are Volunteers of America Mid-States, AVOL, and LiveWell Services, also received HOPWA CARES Act funding allocated to HOPWA competitive grantees totaling $48,113. And those HOPWA competitive funds, both CV and the newest competitive round, are not included in the 2023 annual allocation plan or the consolidated planning process. Now we'll turn to home. Created by Congress in 1990, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, or known more shortly as HOME, provides funding to subrecipients for several types of affordable housing production and rehabilitation activities. KHC administers and monitors the program for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, awarding funding to eligible subrecipients, including local governments, housing authorities, private developers, and nonprofit housing providers. The purpose of the HOME program is to expand the supply of quality affordable housing for low income, and that means those who are at or below 80% of area median income, and very low income, which are households at or below 50% of area median income. The HOME program can be utilized to expand the supply of decent, safe, and sanitary housing through either new construction or rehabilitation of existing structures with forgivable deferred rates. The HOME program's flexibility empowers local communities to design and implement strategies tailored to meet their own needs and priorities. KHC awards HOME funds to developers and subrecipient agencies to support the construction or rehabilitation of rental units, the construction or rehabilitation of homeownership units, and we also provide tenant-based rental assistance using these funds. And that TBRA program assists income-eligible households with rental subsidies for up to 24 months. Please note that Kentucky Housing Corporation does not fund owner-occupied home repair with HOME funds, instead using Kentucky Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars for that purpose. For the current federal fiscal year 2022, KHC was awarded $15,558,209 in HOME funding. For federal fiscal year 2023, KHC was awarded $15,095,567. In the current fiscal year, using HUD federal fiscal year 2022 funds, program income, and prior year's allocations, KHC is awarded $2.461 million for tenant-based rental assistance, $15.592 million for rental production, and $4.8 million to single-family homeownership production. HOME funds also support KHC and subrecipient administrative costs, totaling $1.1 million, and Community Housing Development Organization, or CHODO, operating grants totaling $420,000. The rental production allocations include projects in the pipeline funded through prior year's competitive awards. KHC is currently scoring competitive applications, and we anticipate announcing awards for our single-family development program either the end of this week or early next. And those will be allocating our 2022 HOME dollars. Another competitive application for single-family homebuyer development will be released in November 2023, and we will award federal fiscal year 2023 dollars via that cycle. Using two-year grant cycles, KHC will also proportionally allocate federal fiscal year 2022 HOME tenant-based rental assistance funds on a renewal basis to 2020 awardees, and will proportionately allocate federal fiscal year 2023 HOME tenant-based rental assistance funds on a renewal basis to 2021 awardees, and we'll do that in spring 2023. Please note that the American Rescue Plan Act, passed on March 11, 2021, provided $5 billion in HOME funds nationwide to provide rental assistance and supportive services, develop affordable rental housing, and help acquire non-congregate shelter to be converted into permanent affordable housing or be used as emergency shelter to benefit a specific population. These HOME ARC funds, as they are known, must primarily benefit either individuals or households that are or are at risk of experiencing homelessness, people who are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, sexual assault, or human trafficking, or populations for whom supportive services would prevent the family's homelessness, or those having a high risk of housing instability, or finally, households with a veteran family member that meets any one of those priorly named groups. The Kentucky Balanced Estate was allocated $52,512,704 in HOME ARC funds. These funds are not part of the federal fiscal year 2023 action plan discussed today. Rather, they are governed by an allocation plan submitted as an amendment to the 2021 action plan. HUD approved KHC's HOME ARC allocation plan in January 2022. The vast majority of these HOME ARC funds, or $38.5 million, will be used to support the development of supportive housing units. $7.5 million has been allocated to fund supportive services in those units to be developed, as well as to continue street outreach programs initially funded utilizing ESGCV or ESG CARES dollars. $500,000 will be made available for nonprofit developer capacity building on an as-needed basis, and 10% of HOME ARC funding will also support KHC and subrecipient administrative costs. We initially allocated $2 million for the development of non-congregate shelter. However, in December 2022, competitive application for those funds resulted in no viable applications being submitted for the program. As a result, for the terms of our awarded, approved home allocation plan, those $2 million converted to rental production funds. And with that, I will turn the mic over to David Stark to discuss home-funded multifamily activities.
Thank you, Curtis. So as Curtis mentioned, the home funds are also used for the creation and preservation of affordable rental housing units. Unlike home, in which KHC utilizes those funds in various different ways, I'll also speak to National Housing Trust Fund dollars. KHC anticipates using all of its National Housing Trust Fund allocation toward the preservation and/or creation of rental units. So that source of funding will be directed solely to rental units. Both the home funds and the NHTF funds will be awarded competitively to multifamily projects that have a need for gap financing and that meet the regulatory and programmatic requirements of these respective programs. KHC's policies related to our home and NHTF multifamily programs are available in our multifamily guidelines, which are located on KHC's website. An updated version of these guidelines will be published in the near future for fiscal year 24 and should be posted in the coming weeks. We expect to make home and NHTF funds available in our 2024 9% competitive funding round, for which applications will open in May of 2023 and be due in August of 2023. Those are our expected timelines with respect to the 2024 9% competitive funding round. As we have in past years, we would also expect to make home and NHTF funds available as gap financing for tax-exempt bond transactions. And we expect to have notices of funding availability posted with respect to those here in May of 2023. Finally, we also anticipate making home funds available as financing for smaller scale, non-credit multifamily projects, with a funding round expected to occur later in this year, 2020. So with that, that is a brief discussion of the National Housing Trust Fund and home funds with respect to rental housing. Thank you.
Thank you, David. With that, we are prepared to open the floor to questions and comments on the programs and the information presented here today. We don't have anyone here in person, so now would be the time to chime in the YouTube chat if you were able to reach out. If not, I'll wait for just a moment there. If not, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of ways to comment on this plan. Be looking for an eGram, which will provide a link to both access the plan and a place to provide comment. And you can reach KHC at corpplanreport@kyhousing.org. Again, that's corpplanreport@kyhousing.org. And if there are no further comments, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.